Roll call.
Honorable Mayor Ron Shaver,
Here.
Councilmember David Fowler,
Here.
Doug Shasso,
He has an excused absence this morning.
okay, Allison Howe,
Here.
Clint Anderson,
He also is excused this morning.
Lisa Northrup,
Here.
Kevin Lindell.
Present. Okay, the first item on our agenda is swearing in of Police Officer William Robards. Raise your right hands. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, William Robards,
Do affirm that I will support,
do affirm that I will support,
protect, and defend the Constitution
protect, and defend the Constitution
of the government of the United States of America
of the government of the United States of America
and the Constitution and government of the state of Colorado
and the Constitution and the government of the state of Colorado
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
whether domestic or foreign,
whether domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and that I will bear true faith,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
allegiance, and loyalty to the same,
any ordinance, resolution, or law
any ordinance, resolution, or law
of any state notwithstanding,
of any state notwithstanding,
that I will well and faithfully perform all duties
I will well and faithfully perform all duties
of the office of police officer,
of the office of police officer,
on which I am about to enter and to which I have been duly appointed under the pains and penalties of perjury.
I, William Robards,
Which I am about to enter
on which I am about to enter,
and to which I have been duly appointed
and to which I have been duly appointed
under the pains and penalties of perjury.
under the pains and penalties of perjury.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
Too many words, too many.
We have a tradition here in the police department where we ask the officer who he would like or she would like to pin his badge on. Officer Robards has asked his wife, Dawn, to do that. And we're glad to accommodate that. So here's Dawn.
Don't stab him. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Very nice. Thank you, Dawn. And I will present Officer Robards his police ID card. And congratulations again. A little bit about Bill. He's a veteran of the Marine Corps, 9 years in the U.S. Marine Corps, served on 7 ships, originally from Thornton and now a Fort Morgan resident, very fond of his covenant. And I think, from what I've heard from Bill, and we'll let him certainly offer his comments, he's very excited to be here. We're excited to work for our city, wants to be part of our team. So again, congratulations, welcome aboard. Anything you'd like to add, go right ahead.
I would certainly like to thank Chief Schultz and Commander Sharp, Commander Crone, and everybody at Fort Morgan Police Department for this wonderful opportunity. Everybody's been fabulous, thank you. And I look very much forward to the daily challenges and just being a supportive and productive member of this community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we welcome you aboard.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing on ordinance 1231 on the ordinance amending the appropriation of monies for the funds of the city of Fort Morgan for 2018. This is a public hearing. Please keep public comments to the issues before the city council. Each speaker is asked to limit comment time to 3 minutes unless speaker represents a group of citizens, in which event additional time may be allocated. Please respect these limitations. I reserve the right to limit public comment that is inappropriate under these guidelines or otherwise improper. I also reserve the right to limit testimony or questioning that is repetitive, cumulative, argumentative, or not pertinent to the issues, and to set a time on the duration of testimony if I determine it necessary in light of the number of people who have signed up to testify. First is the issue of legal notice. Mr. Brennan, was it properly noticed?
Yes, Your Honor, a legal notice of this public hearing appeared in the Fort Morgan Times on June 7th.
Next is presentation of the ordinance. Ms. Kinney.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The ordinance we're talking about was explained very well by Chris at the last meeting, as I did listen to her on my way home to Nebraska. Did a very good job. The water fund, we need it to be increased by $399,305, and that's for two reasons. One of them is because of the principle that we always add in at the end of the year on the debt, because when you're using budget terminology, you use revenues and expenses, not decreases in liabilities. Okay, and then the other is because of some expenditures. It was about $500,000 worth of expenditures throughout the year that were okayed with resolutions with the council, but need to be formally in an ordinance according to our rules. So that's it. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Kinney?
No, sir.
You're correct. Chris did a pretty good job of it. Next, we'll hear public comments. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I would ask the city clerk if any oral or written comments were received to your office prior to this hearing.
No, Your Honor.
Council discussion. Are there any questions or discussion from council?
None for me.
Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion by Lisa Northrup, a second by Kevin Lindell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Council action. Mr. Wells.
Your Honor, the council has now heard the information on this legislative decision, and in a legislative decision, you get to determine whether or not it's in the best interest of the community to pass the resolution, and at this point, you can vote yes or no on whether you think that it complies with what's in the best interest of the community.
I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution approving second and final reading of an ordinance number 1231, amending the appropriation of monies for the funds of the city of Fort Morgan, Colorado for 2018, and authorization to publish by title only.
Second?
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Allison Howe. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries on a unanimous vote of 5-0 with council members Anderson and Chauceau absent.
Next is a presentation and possible action on the acceptance of the 2018 final financial audit. Ms. Kinney.
Good morning again. I'm, got to say that twice this year. That'll be it, because you guys are always here at night. I just wanted to introduce our auditor, which you guys know well, is Randy Watkins from ACM, and he's going to give us a good review of the of the audit that they prepared for us with a lot of our help. And I just wanted to say that our audit this year, we feel like it went very well. It was thanks to the auditors. We had auditors who were repeat from the year before, which really makes a difference. A lot of things are already understood and not needed to go over, so it saves some time. The other reason is because of our great employees who always take getting ready for the audit very seriously. This year, we started in November to be ready for the audit that wasn't going to take place until the first part of April. I want to thank Chris Bostron, our general accounting manager, Connie Musgrave, our general accountant, Doug Hoffman, who is in charge of inventory management, Natasha Loncrete, who is accounts payable, Kendra Ormsby, who is the lead in utility billing, and Katie Jess, who is our payroll person. She's the favorite person every 2 weeks in the whole city.
Again on
She
Friday.
just is, you know. So I wanted to mention that the volume of the accounting that we've done in our department has increased quite a bit. If we just look at fixed assets, there were 46 fixed assets in 2018 for a total of $14 million. You know, things that needed to be put onto the books in the proper way. There were 28 in 2017 and only 4.7 million. So last year was a really big year. And when there's a lot more bills to pay and a lot more to do, someone has to do it. I mean, when you look at the fiber network, it was a huge project. We spent over almost $5 million over a period of 2 years. And all of those things were ordered. Doug probably did that. And all of those things were paid for. Natasha probably did that. Chris and I probably approved those things. And to keep us doing that, Katie paid us the payroll. So it's cool that you know, you look at everything we do is great and it's wonderful and the huge projects. So we have a project focus, which is really good, but those projects don't happen without the money. So I want to have Randy come and talk with you about the audit wrap document, which is a really cool thing. It makes it a lot easier to understand the financial statements if you do it from that approach. So, Randy.
Thank you. Good morning. I love how you somehow interjected humor into a financial presentation, so now I have to follow that. Ms. Kinney's absolutely right. There's a lot of work that goes into preparing for an audit. We give them a long list of things that they need to do, and then they prepare all that, and just when they think it's over, we come in with a bunch of questions and have additional selections. So all while still trying to do their full-time job. So I want to also thank and commend them for their effort. They did a great job. You'll see we only had really one journal entry or a couple journal entries primarily relating to pensions and OPEB, which are not easy. It's a pretty complicated area, so they did a great job. The audit wrap document should be the smaller document that's in front of you. Really, it's just our final communication. It shares with you the results of the audit. I will spend a little bit of time going through the financial statements, but you've seen those, you've had those for a while now, so really I'll probably be just entertaining any questions you might have from your review. Skipping past the cover letter and the discussion outline to the page that says status of our audit at the top, page 2. We have substantially completed our audit. This is generally delivered ahead of time. We are done. The version of the financial statements you have in front of you are signed and executed. We've got the rep letter, so we are actually done at this point. The audit was performed in accordance with auditing standards generally accepted in the United States. The objective of our audit is to obtain reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. That just means we don't test everything. We sample the population and draw conclusions from the test work on that sample. Earlier on, you should have received a similar communication that was our planning communication that talked about our planned audit approach. The results of the work we did didn't change our approach at all. We basically executed on our plan. We have issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. That's a lot of times referred to as a clean opinion, which is what you're looking for. The long paragraph there talks about our responsibility with respect to other information contained in the annual report. So you've got the MD&A, the budget to actual comparisons, some OPEB and pension schedules. A lot of that stuff we reconcile to the financial statements and issue in relation to opinion. Some of it, because of the nature of the data or information, we don't issue an opinion. We disclaim an opinion, but we do read it and make sure that it's not materially inconsistent with the financial statements. So now the last two bullet points there really just talk about, you know, we did receive everything we asked for. We received full cooperation from management in conducting the audit. Next page, results of our audit. This top section is really just telling you, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, we went through the whole pension implementation. That was GASB 68. GASB 75 is for other post-employment benefits, or OPEB. So basically anything that's not a pension or retirement that's promised, like healthcare and those types of things, that falls under this OPEB, or other post-employment benefits. So under GASB 75, the city was required to adopt that in the current year, so there were some changes that made to the financial statements. I'll briefly go over those when I get into the financial statements, but this is just telling you that that did change this year. We do what's called a risk-based approach, so we identify the higher risk areas of the audit, and that's where we spend most of our time. These boxes are really just telling you the areas that we spent the majority of our time, based on whether or not it was governed by complex accounting rules, if it was big dollar amounts, significant volumes of transactions, if the controls weren't as strong in those areas. Those are the areas that we spent more of our time on during the audit. Like I mentioned, there were some adjusting journal entries, but again, really relating to OPEB and pension. So the more complicated areas, everything else was handled perfectly. And we talked this morning, there's a possibility that you'll start doing those calculations going forward, so that those may drop off as well. Internal control over financial reporting. As part of the audit, we obtain an understanding of the control environment for the purpose of designing our audit approach. We don't issue an opinion on internal control, but if, as we're doing that, we identify opportunities for improvement, we have to categorize them into one of these three categories. It's deficiencies, just where there should be a control, there's not, but it's inconsequential, so we might discuss it with management, but it's not required to be communicated. A material weakness is a control deficiency so severe that we believe that a material misstatement would be missed. And then a significant deficiency is basically anything in between those two that we think warrants your attention. We didn't identify any material weaknesses as part of the audit this year, so that's a good thing. Other required communications. I already mentioned there was no change in our planned audit strategy as a result of the work we did. We do, as part of the audit, make inquiries of council members, and nothing came out of those inquiries that we think warrants your attention. There were no specialized skills or knowledge necessary for us to complete the audit. We were able to do it internally with the engagement team that we assigned. We're not aware of any consultations with other accountants. We do evaluate other relationships, intergovernmental agreements, and those types of things. Didn't have any issues with those. We didn't have any disagreements with management. We didn't encounter any significant difficulties. The audit went really well this year. There's no other matters that came up as part of the audit that we think warrants your attention that we would share with you today. And then we get, at the end of the audit, a representation letter that basically puts into writing all of the oral representations that are made to us during the audit. The next page just communicates to you our independence. We are required to be independent in both fact and appearance. This is an affirmative statement to that effect. And then the next several pages are the various standards that will become effective in the next few years. Some that became effective during the current year, others that will be effective for the city in future years. One that we'll look at probably going into the next year, because it will be effective for 19, is certain asset retirement obligations. I'm doubting that this will be applicable, but it is something we need to talk about. If there are any legal obligations of the city to remediate any property, to return it to its original condition, or some examples are sewage treatment facilities, so if there's any nuclear or radioactive materials. There's always been guidance, accounting guidance, for-profit organizations, but it hasn't existed in the GASB world until now. So it is something we'll look at, and it's probably the more significant one. And then leases is going to be effective in a couple years, so we'll look at that one probably a little as that one gets closer to being applicable. Any questions on this document before I move into the financial statements? Awesome. All right, so in the financial statements, skipping past the table of contents to our letterhead, this is our audit opinion. It's a couple pages long. The first section describes what we're auditing. The second section is management's responsibility, and then our responsibility is kind of that longer section on that first page. Already talked about kind of our approach in that area, and then our opinion is at the bottom of that page, which, as I mentioned already, is an unmodified opinion. There's an emphasis of a matter paragraph at the top of the next page, which is unique this year, and you would have seen it in the year of adoption for the pension as well. It's really just calling the reader's attention to the fact that you did, in fact, adopt a new accounting principle during the year, and it points to the footnote where that's described. The last couple sections just describes the work we did relating to required supplementary information and then other supplementary information. We'll skip past the management's discussion and analysis for this morning's presentation. I encourage you to read it, but it does contain a lot more discussion around changes from year over year. But moving to the financial statements, the statement of net position on page 14. Here, I'm primarily going to highlight the things that would look different if you compared these to last year. So you'll see that there's deferred outflows of resources relating to pensions, which has existed due to the adoption of 68. OPEB is the new stuff. So you'll see there's a line in both deferred outflows of resources and deferred inflows of resources. And then we've also listed it under non-current liabilities, where you've got the net OPEB liability totaling about $1 million. So when you get to the next page, or the next couple pages, the statement of activities, if you go to the second page, the second to last line shows where you adopted the GASB 75. There's a cumulative effect adjustment, basically bringing the liability as of the beginning of the year onto your financial statements. One other thing I always like to point out, if you look at your unrestricted net position, which is really, that's the net position of the city as a whole that's available to satisfy current obligations. You've got about $20 million in the governmental activities and about $31 million in the business type activities. If you compare that to your annual expenditures, you're in really good shape. You've got over a year's worth of expenditures relating to the governmental activities and nearly a year's worth in business type activities. So if you look at that from a financial health standpoint, the city's in good shape. These two statements are on the full accrual method of accounting and economic resources measurement focus, meaning all current and long-term liabilities are on there. When we get to the fund financial statements, you'll see where that's a difference. So the balance sheet on page 17, this is the balance sheet for the individual governmental funds. This is the modified accrual basis of accounting and current financial resources measurement focus, meaning there's no long-term assets or liabilities on these statements. And so if you look, there's a reconciling statement that follows the balance sheet that will take you from the fund balance to the net position in the government-wide financial statements. Something I like to highlight here is the unassigned fund balance. This is more or less on the cash basis. So the unassigned fund balance, again, is available to the city to satisfy ongoing obligations. The general fund has about $25 million. Comparing that to annual expenditures of $16 million, again, you're in really good shape from a financial position standpoint. The statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances on 19. This shows the sources and uses of cash within each of the individual funds. The two major funds are general and capital improvements. The other funds accumulate into a single line on that page. Again, there's a reconciliation on page 20 that takes you from the changes in fund balance to the change in net position. So you can see those items that reconcile to those. And then we move into the proprietary funds or the enterprise funds that show all of the business type activities. These are on the same basis of accounting as the government-wide, so there's no reconciliation on these. So you could virtually take the enterprise fund balances back up to the front and they'll be the same. The only statement that's unique to the enterprise funds is the cash flows, because they are on the full accrual method and economic resources measurement focus. Here, the cash flow that starts on page 23 shows you the sources and uses of cash within the enterprise funds, organized between operating activities, non-financial capital or non-capital financing activities, and then capital-related financing activities. Any questions on the statements before I move into? There's just a couple footnotes I was going to highlight. All right. So if you go to page 39, this will show you the capital asset activity that Ms. Kinney was referring to. Again, organized between governmental and business type activities. You can see the different purchases that were made during the year, and then those are offset by depreciation expense that gets allocated to the individual functions of the city. The long-term debt roll forward is on the bottom of page 40 and top of page 41, showing how debt has been satisfied or paid down during the year. If you want to see future maturities, that's at the top of page 42. It just shows the next 5 years of maturities, and then after that, from a debt standpoint, you're in really good shape as well. Pension plans is not new, so we'll skip past that one. Thanks to OPEB, you have another 8 pages of footnotes. So if you go to page 55, this is where it talks about the healthcare trust fund, which is offered through PARA. And this is what's creating the OPEB that you have. Very similar disclosures as we had with pensions. It shows the deferred outflows and deferred inflows. There's a couple, with pensions, there's one sensitivity analysis. With OPEB, there's 2. So if you look on page 61, there's there's a with pensions, there's a sensitivity analysis around the discount percentage that's used. Because the healthcare trust fund is paying healthcare costs, it's also factoring in a 1% increase or decrease in healthcare costs. So if healthcare costs go up, that would naturally increase the liability. So it's looking at sensitivity around that. It doesn't have a very dramatic effect. You'd go from $1,040,000 to $1,074,000 with a 1% increase in all of those factors, and about a $30 million decrease the other way. So, and then the other sensitivity analysis is at the bottom of page 62. That was really all I was planning on highlighting. Were there any questions on the financial statements that you guys might have?
This is always really good night reading for me every year. So I'm
When you're struggling to fall
super,
asleep?
excited. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for your firm, and definitely a huge shout out to all the finance team, because finance is fun. And this is actually, yeah, I look forward to these presentations because we can see, well, how well that our staff work together with your firm, and also just that we're in really good shape as an organization financially. So I don't have
Yeah.
any big, ugly questions. I'm just really excited. So
Thank you.
You know, I want to thank our staff as well, and not just our fund department, but all of our managers, because really, the audit is really dependent upon everybody following the rules and making sure that we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing. And of course, the fund department checks all of that, makes sure that it works, and they pay all the bills. They make sure that we're following all of the guidelines and our internal controls. And so I want to thank everybody, but particularly our finance department and Jeannie and all the leadership that we have in that department to make this very successful. And one of the things I think is important to understand is that there are a lot of transactions that go through the city on an annual basis. And I know that we only take a portion of those and check those, but there's an exception to that, and that's with the city manager and the treasurer. Every one of our transactions is checked by the auditors individually to make sure that they meet all of the travel requirement, all the travel policy requirements and everything else, and just really appreciate knowing that we get that extra level of check by the auditors, and I know that our staff is always making sure that we're doing the right thing. You know, sometimes we get questions from staff when we change policies. Why are we doing this? Don't you trust us? And the answer is, of course we trust you, but we also want to be able to protect you in the event that somebody were to make an allegation that you did something that was inappropriate. We can go back and say, no, here's the policy, we looked at it, and it was followed. And I appreciate what you guys do every year and what you guys do every day when you come in and do the audit and prepare for the audit to make sure that we're taking care of the citizens' funds the way that the citizens have required us to and the way that council's required us to. So thank you. Now it's time for an audibration. Is that? Yeah, time. We're all about brations, alibrations, audiberations, celebrations. So anyways. Great.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Randy.
a lot.
Okay.
That is something to clap for sure.
With that, I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution accepting the 2018 financial audit.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup, a second by Kevin Lendl, vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Now it's done.
Run, Randy.
Run, Randy, run.
Next on the agenda is presentation on bids for the Alco feeder electric distribution line rebuild. Mr. Lynn?
Morning. I love these morning meetings. Can we do more of them?
No.
I would, but we miss a few people when we do, so.
All right. In front of you this morning, I have a line rebuild out of our west substation. It's the Alco feeder. It was put out to bid on May 1st. I had 3 bidders, Hooper Corporation, Altitude Energy, and CPI. And this year, we're going to go with CPI for $111,042. So we're requesting council approve and accept the bid from CPI in the amount not to exceed $130,000 for the Alco feeder electric distribution line rebuild project. The extra $19,000 is for unforeseen circumstances when we're doing construction.
That never happened.
Never, ever. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I just have, I just feel like I'm always a newbie for like the next 5 years probably. But with this section, what homes or businesses are connected to this substation?
So basically, Alco, Murdoch's, so we're going from 144 up to Highway 34, so there's 2 or 3, 4 businesses in there, plus it ties everything else coming
Right.
into town and south of town, so.
Cool.
Residential businesses, it's a main feeder line.
Awesome, thanks.
You're welcome.
We always like to know where it is. It's not
West of
necessary-
town along the ditch, right by Murdoch's.
When you're putting it in, will there be any disruption of service?
No, we work really hard at keeping the power on, so the only time the
Always.
power's off is when we cut over the new stuff
Sure.
from the old stuff, so, limited.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So one other comment I throw out there about Doug and his department is these projects are very important for the reliability of our system. And Doug has done a really good job during his tenure to make sure that we are going out regularly and making sure that we have this master plan that we follow to make sure that things are up to date and taken care of. If you go to a lot of other communities, I know Doug does it every time he goes to communities, got me doing it now, look at their power poles and how they manage power poles and what's on the power poles and how they look. Our guys do an exceptional job of maintaining our system, and I'm proud of that. I've gone to other places and I'm like, holy cow, that would never fly in our community. And it says a lot about his department and the pride that they take in what they do.
I got a good group of guys, really good group of guys.
You used to have a lot of outages, tree branches, squirrels,
Yeah,
and that's all.
we tree trim and we do our best to control the squirrel population.
Not good when a squirrel
No,
gets,
squirrels burn a lot of things up when they get into
they
stuff.
probably don't survive the episode, though.
No, I've never seen one run away.
I'll have to concur with Jeff that you've successfully removed, this job has successfully removed my ability to just drive down the road and not look at things like power poles and hydroelectric, and it's like, I used to just be able to drive by that stuff, and you can't do that anymore now.
Yeah, my guys they do a phenomenal job on this system, so, and it shows.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Linton?
No, sir.
Seeing none, I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer approval of acceptance of a bid from Colorado Powerline Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $130,000 for the Alco Feeder Electric Distribution Line Rebuild Project.
Second.
A lot of words for this early.
Have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Kevin Lindell. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, guys.
Next is a presentation on a consulting contract with T.
Yes, thank you, Honor. Before you today, we have for your consideration a contract with, it's the Energy Authority Incorporated. It's a nonprofit organization that assists government entities in developing various power sources. Right now, we're looking at a lot of different opportunities as it relates to renewable power sources, and we're going to use their services as we move down that road. We've got a few projects that we have lined up for them to review and to look at and to assist us with so that we can continue to move down the road of having renewable and affordable energy in the city of Fort Morgan. So this project or this contract is basically to assist us to move those projects forward. One of the things I think is important for the community to know is that we actually have 47% renewable energy within our portfolio today, with a mix of hydro, wind, and landfill gas attributes. So we continue to look at distributive generation opportunities to promote the economy in Fort Morgan and to have affordable and renewable sources of electricity and energy. So are there any questions on the contract?
I just have a quick one. With these consultants, who will they primarily be working with? Like our attorneys? Like
Primarily with
department?
Brent. Primarily with Brent.
Okay.
because some of the things that they may be looking at are stuff with the gas side of things, or they'll be looking at things with electric, and so Brent will primarily be working with them. Yeah. And he's had several meetings with them already on some of the projects that we've done. They do some things with Mean and MPGA already, so we're very comfortable with what they're able to do and what the services that they provide. So we've kind of test driven them a little bit on some things before we decided we're going to use them. So.
They don't supply engineering services.
No, I don't believe they do engineering services for our
Just financial.
and regulatory kinds of things. How do we work through and get credits, or specific things get credits? So.
And after the contract's approved, as far as like their scope of work, will we hear back in 6 months, in a year? Like, when will we kind of learn about the results from their consulting work?
Probably, we're looking at probably about 12 months, but we can give you updates as we move along so that you know what's going on. I'll make a note of that we bring stuff back to you maybe on a quarterly basis of what's happening.
Quarterly's awesome. Yeah.
Jeff, do we have a educated guess as to what the total cost of this will be? Looking at the hourly rate.
Yeah, the hourly rates are in there. At the front end, there's probably going to be a little more work involved, and I think we estimate somewhere between $3,600 and $4,200 a month is what it's going to be.
Right.
So.
Thank you.
That 36 and 4,200 a month is going to be initially, or is that going to be on the?
I think that should be.
Anticipated ongoing?
I think that's kind of what their average, they said, would be, is somewhere between there. So it would be ongoing for the 12 months. So.
Any other questions from Mr. Wells?
I guess the other one I'd have is it standard in a contract that when they do provide your rates, saying, well, the rates may change after December 19?
That is standard, but one of the things that we told them is we don't want them to change. They have them in there. One of the things that we can do is it's subject to appropriations on a year-to-year basis, and so that's what we've told them. If they go up significantly, we can say we don't want your services anymore. But it is standard in these kinds of agreements for people to say they can change. So.
Okay.
That must be their fiscal year.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Seeing none, I'd entertain a resolution.
Your Honor,
Go ahead, you can take it.
Your Honor, I have a resolution to approve the consulting contract with TEA. Do I need to say it out? Say it out?
Yeah, TEA is fine.
TEA, with TEA.
Second.
I have a resolution by Allison Howell, a second by Kevin Lindell. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Next is a presentation on a change order for CenterPoint Plaza Infrastructure Project. Mr. Glanmeyer.
All right, good morning. I don't know if you know, the mic system went down, so I'll try to speak up so maybe everybody can hear in the back. What you have in your packet here this morning is a change order request for CenterPoint Plaza subdivision. If you haven't been out to CenterPoint in a while, you want to go out. There's a lot of work going on out there. They're currently in the process of finishing up the road base section for the road, curb gutter, and sidewalk. I'm told it's possible the concrete guys will be in town next Monday to start the curb and gutter and sidewalk sections. Then we'll be close to pavement. So since we're getting close to the end of that, we did receive the drawings for Phase 2, which would be the completion of Beaver Avenue over to Beef Plant Road and Saunders from the intersection of Beaver and Saunders south to Railroad Avenue. That sort of completes the X in the middle of that property. We are starting to get some interest in parcels that are connected to that lower, the southwest and southeast corners. So it's time to build that infrastructure in those roads so that we can get those folks in, possibly developing on some of those lots. We did use the same engineer to get that all designed. We've got the drawings. We thought we might just sit down with the current contractor and see if we could negotiate a change order using mostly all the same unit prices we already had for phase one, which we bid out early last year, middle of last year. And we were able to do that. There were a few line items that changed, predominantly on the asphalt side. It's hard to hold asphalt costs just because of the price of oil. It's so volatile that they can't lock those prices in for years at a time. But everything else primarily stayed exactly the same, except for the piping installation. The city decided to buy the pipe. With Doug and Derek's help, we were able to bid that. You'll see that on a future agenda. But the contractor's just going to install the material that we provide, and that saves us money. They don't mark up that material if we buy it. So that was a good change for us as well. The original project was about $3.5 million. Phase one was about $3.5 million. This change orders for just over $2 million. I know that's a large number, but we know we're going to save mobilization of the contractor. They're already here, and that's estimated at around $150,000. So right out of the gate, we've got that cost savings. The actual cost for them to do the work is right at $1.88 million. We did include a contingency of 10% in this project. We've been pretty successful not using the contingency on phase one. In fact, all we've done is save money at this point. We had a change that actually reduced the contract rather than increased it. So we're hoping that we can stay in that $1.88 million, but we are asking for the full contingency at, which would put the project at $2,071,578.47. That's the change order amount that we're requesting. So you have all of that in front of you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about that.
Steve, really quick, if you were to bid this out in a year or two, do you think that those unit prices that they've already given us in phase one would go up?
There's no doubt. I think this probably, the engineer's estimate's right at $2.5 million. So I think, you know, we'd be well over $2 million if we bid this out, probably around 2.3, 2.4 if I had to guess.
Now, this doesn't take Saunders Road up and across. It doesn't include that, does it?
Well, Saunders will be connected to Platte Avenue. So basically, a connection point at Platte Avenue all the way to Railroad Avenue. Saunders does exist on the north side of Platte, so this does get it connected basically as a throughfare.
In this cost here, that's included?
Actually, that was in phase one to connect it to 34. What this will do is take it from the new extension of Beaver Avenue south to Railroad. So this will essentially connect Saunders from Railroad to Platte Avenue. Okay. Yep.
And you did say that we should go out and look at that, but don't go past the barriers, correct?
Yeah, be careful of the traffic control. If you'd like a tour, I'm happy to take anybody out. But there is a lot of good work happening out there, and happy to take anyone out on a tour. It's a fun project. I know Jeff's had several people over there. We had the governor, or the senator over there the other day, right?
Yep, the mayor and I accompanied Senator Gardner over there. We've had Governor Polis came and visited the site, and we also had the Office of Economic Development and International Trade State Committee come out and visit the site as well. We've got a lot of interest in that area, and you know, we're working with MCEDC and other organizations to try and figure out how to put some housing down in that southeast corner, and that's part of the reason why moving forward with phase two is important, so we have that connectivity from that north to south piece, because we're hoping to get somewhere around 200 housing units in there in the next few years. So multifamily housing units next few years. So it is an important site, and everybody that's been out there has just been impressed with the project, and I can't thank Steve enough for the work that he's put in and his guys have put in on his team to make that happen. And this is a big project.
Great. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Glanmeyer?
My only question is, are we going to have a ribbon cutting and let people drive out, before we let people drive out there?
We could sure schedule something. We'll call it a centrabration.
Center point abration.
Got to get point in there somewhere.
Central Point, Operation.
Plaza-bration.
Plazabration.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's no questions. I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution approving the change order for the Center Point Plaza Infrastructure Project in an amount not to exceed $2,071,578.47.
Second.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Kevin Lindell. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Next is presentation authorizing the mayor to execute the new wastewater discharge permit for Dairy Farmers of America. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is something that you know a lot about.
Yes.
Under our permit from the state, we are authorized to issue industrial permits to local industrial users to discharge into our facility. The state updates their requirements, and EPA and the feds update their requirements from time to time, and so and the permits expire, and we have to reissue those. So this is basically taking the permit that we have issued to Dairy Farmers of America and integrating some of the local limit requirements that have been established by the state and the EPA, and issue them this permit, which basically says this is what you can send us into our facility, and if you don't send the right amounts, then we will enforce that. And I'm not sure, it's more of a housekeeping thing at this point, but are there any questions? Because I know the mayor can answer them.
I have dealt with this once or 4 times before. Have we ever got our renewed permit from the state, or are we still working on our one from years ago?
We're still working on the one from years ago. We've been told that we're going to get a new permit. We've been working with them on a new permit. One of the things that's kind of held that up a little bit is we asked them to do a PEL, which is a study to determine whether or not we could accommodate some of the waste from Western Sugar to assist in the smell issues that from time to time plague the community. And so I think that they're waiting to determine what the outcome of that study is. But I know that Skip's been working on it and Brent's been working on it really hard to get that finished. But with the state, you just kind of, you go at their time frame. Yeah. So we're still working under the old permit. And, we had a 3-year, is it Reg 81? The one that where the phosphates and the nitrates. And
yep.
We did a 3-year temporary review on that. And I think before we get any kind of enforcement requirements to change up what we're doing, we still have, I think we finished out the 3 years, but we still haven't heard back on what they're going to require us to do after that. And I think we kept our numbers under our current processing within what the state wants, so we may not see any significant changes in what we have to do as it relates to Reg 81 at this point. So there's a lot of what ifs out there that we're waiting from the state to understand. And I know they've had a lot of turnover in their offices in the last few years. We went down and visited with them on this issue with Western Sugar, and were introduced to a lot of new people in the office, and it appears like a lot of the new hires are coming out of California and their environmental group. So it could get interesting, but no, we don't have.
So the one comment they have in here that all other limits remain unchanged, and is that referring to their flow, BOD, TSS, everything other than the metals?
Yes.
That's in their current permit? They're not required to list them in this agreement anymore?
That's my understanding, is that this is what we issue to them, and it's just an amendment to the previous.
Did Kurt help draft this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Kurt's been doing a great job in helping us with a lot of things.
Yeah, I dealt with him on the other side of his sword.
Yeah, Kurt used to be the guy for the EPA, and He's the one that coined the phrase "pay to pollute," I think, and got after the city of Fort Morgan years ago when Ron had to sort out that mess. But he's now our consultant, and he does a really good job.
Good to have him
He
on
seems
here
to know what
today.
the other side's thinking.
It sounds like it's good to have him on the
Yeah.
opposite side.
He knows his business, that's for sure. So, and he, on a side note, he's still working with us on the Western Sugar.
Yes, he is.
Aspect.
And he's reviewing the Pell right now, so we can
Okay.
understand what we can and can't do. So.
Okay. With that, I would entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I would offer a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a new wastewater discharge permit for Dairy Farmers of America.
Second.
A resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Kevin Lendl. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is a public hearing on ordinance 1232 and the ordinance amending the Fort Morgan Municipal Code to give the city council discretion to allow alcohol on a public property under certain limited and controlled circumstances. Once again, this is a public hearing. Please keep comments to the issues before the city council. Each speaker is asked to limit comment time to 3 minutes unless speakers represent a group of citizens, in which event additional time may be allocated. Please respect these limitations. I reserve the right to limit public comment that is inappropriate under these guidelines or otherwise improper. I also reserve the right to limit testimony or questioning that is repetitive, cumulative, argumentative, and not pertinent to the issues, and to set a time limit on the duration of testimony if I determine it necessary in light of the number of people who have signed up to testify. First is a legal notice. Mr. Brennan, was it properly noticed?
Yes, Your Honor, legal notice of this public hearing appeared in the Fort Morgan Times on June 7th.
Presentation of the ordinance. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you may recall, this came up several weeks ago to an inquiry by the organizers of Bobstock about the possibility of moving the beer garden in association with that event onto public property instead of the Elks parking lot for reasons of security and safety in the area behind the band shell. We had first reading of this ordinance last meeting, and it was approved unanimously. It's unchanged now. It only allows alcohol consumption on public property in certain circumstances related to a special event permit, which is the type of permit that Bobstock and the Fall Harvest Car Show, other special events use, and generally do it on private property at the Elks. It's not a blanket lifting of prohibition on public consumption of alcohol or anything like that. So it would still require the going through the process of posting the property and making the application for the public or special events permit, and it would be brought to the council for approval.
Have we determined how we're going to post that?
Yeah, I'm still kind of mulling that over. I'm not sure how.
Hang it from,
Yes,
we
that's up to
put the
you.
banners, you could hang it from the banner thing.
Yeah,
So,
maybe the library lawn, I don't know.
okay. Any questions for Mr. Brennan? Next, we'll hear public comment. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I would ask the city clerk if any oral or written comments were submitted to your office prior to this hearing.
No, Your Honor.
Council discussion, is there any discussion from council?
I had one person that reached out and asked a question about whether or not this was going to allow alcohol to actually be in City Park, to which I explained that it would still be within confines of a gated area, speaking in baby terms, in a gated area, and that it didn't remove that. So that was the only question that I have. So.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions wanting clarification on it, but I think that was asked and answered. Anybody else?
And just for clarification on seeking this, we're just going to create a separate permit, so after they already have like a special events permit, then they apply for a second one that's comes through the governing body of the city council, and that's to have a special event liquor permit. Is that correct?
No, this would be the special event liquor permit, and normally, under a resolution passed a number of years ago, I approve those administratively.
Okay.
If there are no protests, if there are protests to the permit, it would come to the city council.
Okay.
When it's on public property, the application for the permit is on public property, we will bring that application that I would normally approve administratively to you, so I don't have to decide.
Good call.
Thank you.
So they should probably, so if individuals are looking to do that, they should be planning accordingly, because that will add an extension to the amount of time that it takes to get that permit
Right.
issued, so.
Right, they'll need to
Plan
be.
accordingly.
They'll need to look at the calendar or call me and make sure that there's time to post the property, leave time for protests, and still have a city council meeting in between before the event where you guys could approve or disapprove.
When in doubt, call John.
Right.
Early.
Okay.
Early.
Any other discussion or comments from council? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved?
Second.
Have a motion to close by Lisa Northrup, Kevin Lindell, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Council action. Mr. Wells.
Yes, Your Honor. You've now been presented this ordinance that would modify the allowance of alcohol in public places under a special use permit. It's a legislative action, so you need to vote based upon what you believe is in the best interest of the community, based upon the information not only that you've heard today from John, but also that you've heard from other people that may have reached out to you in the community with regard to this change in the law.
With that, I will entertain a resolution.
Your Honor, I offer a resolution approving second and final reading of ordinance number 1232, amending the Fort Morgan Municipal Code to give the city council discretion to allow alcohol on public property under certain limited and controlled circumstances, and authorization to publish by title only.
Second.
I have a resolution by Lisa Northrup and a second by Kevin Lindell. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
You're good to go, sir. Thank you. Next is a presentation on the first reading of an ordinance 1233 imposing a moratorium on the new residential development in the defined portion of a B1 zoning district in the downtown area, and request to schedule a public hearing on ordinance for July 2nd. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is in response to some concerns by citizens, and it was brought to City Council with regard to construction of housing within a certain area in the downtown area. So we have created a moratorium that essentially covers from Platte Avenue down to the railroad tracks on the north and south boundary. On the east boundary, it would be the west side of State Street, and on the west boundary, it would be the east side of Ensign. And so that boundary will then be in place for us to work with downtown businesses as well as landowners in the area and other businesses throughout the city, and anybody that may be interested in what the overlay district must or will look like and what restrictions will be in that specific area. The overlay area may expand based upon feedback that we get from the community. Right now, I've got Sarah working on public meetings in the next few months to invite not just the City Council, but also the Planning Commission to be a part of those meetings with the public. We're thinking about having those meetings not just in this room, but maybe in some of the businesses downtown. I know the Cover Theater can hold a lot of people, and it may be we have a meeting down there to get some feedback from people in a more business-like setting. So we're going to be putting those meetings together over the next few months. The moratorium will be for 6 months, which will give us roughly till around December to get something put together and give plenty of time for feedback from the community and citizens on, these questions that we brought up at the last meeting. Once this is passed on a second reading in the next meeting, we will then limit basically there won't be any permits issued in that area until we can get the situation resolved. So that's the ordinance that we're presenting. Any questions?
And when you say, just for clarification, when you say that and no permits will be issued, that's everything. So that's if there were to be a property that was in between there and they wanted to remodel?
Not for commercial purposes, but for residential purposes. This will just restrict residential purposes. So if somebody has a residential use currently within that zone and they came and wanted to make some modification for residential purposes, they'd have to change. But for example, if somebody came in and said, I want to change my facade and use the facade improvement money, you're going to have to get a permit to do that, but that's not a restricted, it's a business use, right? So,
Okay.
it's a good question. Thank you. Steve, did I get that right? Steve, did I get that right? Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Double check.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Wells regarding this?
No.
Seeing none, I would entertain a resolution to move forward.
Your Honor, I offer a resolution to approve the first reading of ordinance 1233, imposing a moratorium on new residential development in that defined portion of the B1 zoning district in the downtown area, and request to schedule a public hearing for this ordinance on July 2nd.
Second.
I have a resolution by Allison Howell, a second by Kevin Lindell. Vote by roll call.
Sorry.
We're all staring at you. Could you
That
feel it?
resolution carries unanimously.
Get out of the way.
I was waiting for a second.
We're very used to what is expected to happen, so if the lights don't come on, we don't know what to do.
Okay, next on the agenda is the 2020 budget calendar. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Your Honor. Council, I prepared a fairly lengthy memo that kind of explains what we're doing, but I'll go through it really quickly. One of the things that we've done over the years is looked at sustainability as it relates to what we provide for our employees and what we budget for in the city. And it's important to understand that in a certain sense we have competing interests, in the sense that one of our philosophies is that we want to attract and retain the most qualified people. On the other side, we also want it to be sustainable. And so one of the things that we're looking at is how are we maintaining the concept of being attractive to employees, new employees, and attractive to our current employees to keep them here. We have done, and it's been very successful, a 3% per year increase in our benefits and salaries for our employees. And when we look at what we've done, it's been over the last 7 or 8 years. This must be an emergency.
We're
So
really excited about what you're talking
they're
about.
excited. They must be excited what I'm talking about. So we started back 7 years ago in adjusting pay, and the first time that we went out and did a survey, which is a statewide survey, we found that 30% of our employees were under the market range. 30%. That was a huge number. Prior to that date, we hadn't done one of these studies for almost 20 years. So we had fallen behind significantly. Council's foresight several years ago in making sure that we budget for employees first has been very helpful to staff to understand where the priorities are when we start setting the budget. We make sure that we understand what the costs of the employees are going to be, and we make sure that that's what we fill in to the operations and maintenance portion of the budget every year. We started the 3% process. When we went back, we looked, we were spending on average 4% per year. Our average income was 3% per year. That's how we set that 3% number. One of the things that we have found as we've started to bring people up to the market minimum, we just went out last year for a study because of the work that we've been doing and the support of City Council. We only had 7 people, 3% of our total employees that were under market. So the adjustment was much less expensive to get everybody into the range. But we continue to have the same problem that was addressed the first time around. When we have people that have been here for a long time, we aren't able to move them up in the ranges very well. And so when we look at how are we moving people up into the range that they fall into so that they're not always at the bottom of the range, what are we doing to make that happen? This last year we did a longevity pay increase that included base building. So people who had been here the longest amount of time got a 5% increase, essentially moving them up into the scale so we don't have this compression at the bottom where we've moved everybody up into the market range. So over time, we're slowly moving people up into the ranges of where they're, where they should be. We went and looked at, individuals, how long they've been in specific roles. This is another interesting perspective. Even if you look at my role as the city manager, I've actually been in my job less than 10 years. It's just a little over 8 years, even though I've been with the city for almost going on 13 years now. So when you look at people at time in their specific job, somewhere around 69 to 70% of our employees are at that less than 10 years. However, we promote from within, and so a lot of those people have considerably much more time within those ranks. So that number of 70% of our workforce being in their role under 10 years or less may be a little bit deceptive. The goal this year is to continue to move forward with the results of the study and continue to address the concerns of the employees. When we got our results back on the benefits review, we learned that our PTO coverage was significantly less. That was something that had been brought up by employees over the last several years, and we learned that we were off. We're making that adjustment this year, which will have limited or very minimal impacts on the budget. Next year, what we want to do is continue to address the concerns of employees in moving forward in trying to get them up further into the range. Next year, we're making a change in the medical benefits. We've talked about this for some time. We know that the unsustainable plan is the buy-up plan. One of the things that we're trying to promote is that our employees are very consumer conscious when they shop around for medical benefits. We also want to promote people going to the doctor, so we're working on a lot of different incentives to make that happen. But with the reduction and elimination of that buy-up plan, right now the overall numbers are that our healthcare costs may come down a little bit. So what we want to do with some of that savings and to address the concerns of the employees, we want to provide a 6% base building pay increase in the 2020 budget to be administered as follows. On January 1st, we would do a 3% pay increase for everybody across the board, but then we would put 3% of that money into play for our pay for performance policy, allowing the managers to have discretion on how they rank their employees and then how the employees are paid. The overall cost in this, if you look at it, the increase really isn't the $395,000. It's half of that, because we would be doing 3% anyways. So we're really somewhere around $180,000 increase for all of the employees in the city. This includes every department and every person on a full-time basis. So one of the things to keep in mind too is, well, I don't know if you have to keep that in mind, minimum wage will go up every year as long as we have a change. So again, trying to keep our skilled workers and people happy with where they're at in the city. We want to promote this year. So my ask of the council in our budgeting process this year is to consider this kind of an adjustment based upon the concept that we're trying to move people up further within the pay range. So that's what we're hoping to be able to do. Any thoughts, concerns, questions, complaints?
So this is going to be a kind of an ongoing discussion through our budgeting process.
It will be.
And I bring that up just so that we have,
We have two
people that are missing on here, but I would say at this point in time, let's proceed with where we're going, and then we'll have a discussion on this.
Yes, we
when
will.
get further into the budgeting process.
And the reason why, that's a really good point, Mayor, because what we're going to do is, with this direction, the fund department will factor this into the budget, and then we'll see where that comes out and what those costs are. And then as we go through all the individual line items within the budget, you'll see this is what the costs are for employees, and this is what the costs are for everything else in those departments. And if we get to the end and we don't have enough money, there's some adjustments that we can make, and that's part of this process. But as part of what we've done in the past, we've always looked at what are we going to pay employees. It's always been that 3%. This year we want to do something a little bit different, and I wanted to make sure we brought that in front of council and made that, make sure you're okay with that before we drop it in.
And then you had mentioned the PTO, that's the amount of accrual that they can
Yeah.
carry on the books will go up.
We'll go up, yes.
So it's not the amount that they earn, it's the amount that they roll over year to year?
But it's both. We have kind of a use it or lose it. This is how much you get in a year. We want you to use it in that year. We don't want you to bank it. We want you to use it. And so we don't have a bank. That's one of the things that we could consider down the road. I know there's been some discussions of, well, do we put in this bank? Well, that creates a huge unfunded liability down the road. This way, we budget for it in that year, they use it or they don't, and we don't create an unfunded liability fund down the road. That can always change if council wants to go that way, but I think everybody's pretty happy to say, okay, my accruals are equal to the number that we're using. And you know, the number that we used was the average hours of PTO that are given to government employees or public employees outside of the metro area. So we didn't look at what was provided in the metro area. We did more of what's provided in our area, outside of the metro area. So we can put that together, and definitely, Mayor, this will be part of the budget process and where we go. So.
Very good.
I was really excited to read through this. I think I've been in lots of conversations regionally about keeping good staff, and I think this is exactly the direction the city needs to go as far as, making sure PTO is comparable. And I think, I'm really excited to see how these conversations go so we can keep our awesome employees here.
Thank you. They are awesome.
I think it's reflected in staff retention and everything, and employee retention. I think that that's such a strong point about all the people that work with us at the city and everything is that we've got people that want to stay here, so therefore it helps perpetuate the current environment of serving the citizens, and then you're not also expending extra resources trying to train new people. So I think it's proving that it's working.
Yes. Yes, and thank you for your support on council. I know, our employees do a really good job day to day. You don't always get to see what they do, but you kind of do. I mean, you drive around, you see the things that they do, you have interaction with them. But we do have great employees, and we want to keep them. And what makes them great is that, they're here and they're buying into the community and they're a part of the community, and that's important for us as an organization. So thank you for your support.
Okay. Next is consent agenda. Mr.
Thank you, Your
Brennan.
Honor. Today's consent agenda, includes item A, approval of the disbursements and payroll for May, and item B, approval of the minutes of the June 4th, 2019 City Council regular meeting. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business by the council and will be enacted with a single motion and a single vote by roll call. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is deemed necessary, that item should be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or for what's on the consent agenda? If none, I would entertain a resolution accepting the consent agenda.
Your Honor, I make a motion to, or I offer a resolution to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a resolution by Allison Howell, a second by Lisa Northrup. Vote by roll call.
That resolution carries unanimously.
Okay. Next is public comment and audience participation. Seeing none. Reports by officials and staff.
Thank you, Your Honor. One final statement on the pay discussion we just had is that would be this year only. And then we would look at, what adjustments moving forward to maintain that sustainability. So it's a one-year thing. Several things to talk about, bring up to council, which you may or may not know about is, first of all, I want to thank Ty and his crew. I want to thank the Streets Department. Thank Sarah. The Thursday Night Live has been a big hit. It's been a lot of fun. Had a little bit of rain last week at the end, but overall, we're getting very positive feedback and getting a lot of good support down into the buildings, into the downtown area. I even talked with one person that said we only had one person come into our store the first week, but they bought something. So, and it was a good purchase. So, we're seeing this being effective. But I think also as a sense of community, I think we're seeing a lot of people come out, and it's great to see all the different people that are coming out to Thursday Night Live. It's a big deal. We're in the middle of our golf tournament season, and I know that there have been a few complaints about some of the issues out there. Just want you to know we're working really hard to get those things fixed and address those issues. We'll continue to address those issues. We'll be doing weekly updates to the golfers and to the council on what's happening out there. But I want you to know we take it very serious, and we're working on it as best as we can at this point. And I know we'll be getting some resource lists back on if there's anything else that we can do to make it better. So if you've received any complaints about that, know that we're working on it. If you have any specific concerns that you want us to know about, please continue to share those with us. And I know that Councilmember Lindo's been very helpful in sharing with me some of the concerns that people have brought forward, and we've been trying to address those. So another thing, the celebration went really well.
Real
Yeah,
quick
sure,
on that.
sure.
When you're letting council know, are we letting the Golf Association know too? Because I know that's kind of what you'd said. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that we're sending
Yes.
out an email when we had updates or whatever
Yeah.
too, because that seems to be where most of the comments are coming from.
Yeah, we're working with the Golf Association to get them information. I know, and Ty, do you have anything specific on that? Because I know we're looking at putting out information on Facebook, and we're going to send out some emails.
So last week, I sent a bulk email out to about 1,000 email addresses. I don't know how many opened it, haven't checked. And then we posted the newsletter also on the website as well as the Facebook page.
Good.
Kind of a maintenance report newsletter. I don't think we'll do that weekly, but we're going to try to do bits and pieces on Facebook for weekly updates, and then we'll keep the monthly newsletter rolling moving forward. Kind of how we're trying to.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, and we're here to work with you and with the citizens. So if there's any concern, just let us know. We'll get right on it. We're also working on cleanup in the alleys. It's an ongoing thing. I know Steve has been working really hard with Bobby to make those things happen. One thing to be aware of is that we've been down. Some people in that department have had some illnesses and some other things that have come up. So we're down a little bit in our manpower, but I know it is a priority, and we're going to get out there and get it cleaned up. And so I want to thank Steve for his focus on that. If you hear of any places or have any concerns of specific places, let me know. We'll get those out to sanitation and make those a priority.
Is there anything
Yeah.
we can do? Somebody brought this up. When we know, I get that we have delays in getting some stuff picked up. We mark trees when we know we're going to go take care of
Yeah.
trees. Is there a way we can somehow or other tag, whatever it is, so that the residents know that it's been reported and that the city is aware. And, I mean, I don't know if that's doable or if that's easy enough. but,
Kind of like a
you know,
lockout, tag out.
I mean, like they have, like the PD has tags that they put on the cars, or, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know that we want to use a spray paint can, because that might encourage a different behavior by other people. But just the thought is somehow, so at least they know that
It's being looked at.
we know that, and it's being looked at.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that internally and see if there's something that we could come up with. I think what we're hoping is with the addition of, getting up to staff and the addition of a couple of extra people whose focus will be to repair, replace, clean up, and take care of it. One of the things that we've tried to do is get summer seasonal help also, because it gets a little bit busier in the summer. We cannot get summer seasonal help. The streets department, I know, has struggled to find people. Parks department, some of the departments that we hire seasonals in, it's been very difficult to find seasonal workers. And that may be one of the things that we have to look at in changing up how we operate, because it's hard to find people that want to just work from the summer. It used to be, we could find teachers that were off in the summer that would want to work, and we still get some of those. But it's just getting harder and harder to find seasonal employees. So, we may have to adjust what we do, get that done. But the internal, how do we let, our citizens know that we're looking at it is definitely something we can look at. Celebration went really well. Free hamburgers, hot dogs. They served somewhere close to, I want to say 500 different hamburgers and hot dogs last week. The evening celebration was great. Had an opportunity to just kind of thank all of our staff. And I want to thank them all again. They're pretty humble folks because a lot of them didn't show up, I think, just because they don't want the notoriety. They do their job every day because they care about the community, and they do their job every day because they take pride in what they do. And I just want to thank them again, as well as our relationship with Allo in making this happen. And we've sat down with them and had some conversations on how we can really push out the marketing as it relates to the fact that we have world-class internet service in the city of Fort Morgan. And, we can upgrade that and make it better moving forward, and we have a lot of control on how that happens. So I want to thank council and all your support as it relates to that. I know with the visit of anybody, but most recently with Senator Gardner, we were able to highlight that, and the mayor talked a little bit about the history and where we came from and where we're at today. And where we're at today is significantly in a better position than most people. And so that's a good thing. Everything else I think we pretty much talked about. Sales tax is up a little bit, and so we're seeing more and more people shop, and we're going to continue to work on the downtown, and overall things are going really well. So was there anyone else that had any announcements or anything?
We started work on the bike park yesterday. Only got one truckload full of equipment. There's another coming on Thursday, so it's going a little slower than we thought.
It was a big truckload.
It
It was a large truckload.
was a large truckload, and the next one I think will be even bigger, but it's really pretty cool. I went by yesterday, those of you that are on my Facebook page. I ran into a kid that's a collegiate BMX rider. He's on scholarship from New Zealand, but on a scholarship to a University of Missouri for riding BMX. And he was on our skateboard park and just thought it was the greatest thing ever, so it was pretty cool video, if you get a chance to see it. He did a backflip off of one of the things.
Did we push that out to our page?
I tried, and I don't know if it worked. I tried to share it to the recreation page.
I tried to share it, but you didn't have it shareable, so I couldn't
I
share
didn't
it.
have it shareable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying,
It was a cool
I don't know social media, but I was trying to do.
Where was that when I was going to school?
Because, this Callum kid, all he had was Instagram, and I wanted him to know I was posting it, so. Anyway,
Ask your kid, they'll help you.
I'll get Danielle.
One of the kids.
So is that his major in college?
Yes, BMX.
That's his sport in college.
Oh.
He rides BMX, mountain bike, and, that indoor track.
Well, I thought it was cool that you posted up there that he was just traveling through.
Yeah.
and stopped to do some training.
He had actually looked on the company who built the skateboard park on their website, and he had picked several spots on his route. He's on his way to Utah for a race, and then goes to Durango next or something.
That was cool.
It was just really cool. His BMX bike that he races is carbon fiber. The whole thing's carbon fiber. Nice kid.
Okay, that it?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Bids, meetings, and announcements. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Your Honor. The City of Fort Morgan Police Department is accepting sealed bids for upfitting 2 unmarked police vehicles until 3 p.m. on June 27th. And the Fire Department is accepting sealed bids for the purchase of bunker gear until 2:45 p.m. on June 28th. Under meetings, the Planning Commission is scheduled to meet on June 24th at 4:30 p.m. here at City Hall. The Museum Heritage Foundation will meet the 27th at 4 p.m. in the Museum Community Room. And the next City Council regular meeting will be July 2nd here at City Hall, back at the usual time of 6 p.m.
With no other business coming before council, this meeting's adjourned.
You got to use it.